Is there a for sure way to grow? How can we be sure what we're doing is effective and contributes to our growth? I think once we decide to start working on the self, we become shrouded by many realizations that cause us to feel like we are growing inversely. As if by committing yourself to improve, we see the many things we ought to. The things we alter, however, are growth. But that beckons the question: is all change growth? I think so. I think growth in many ways does not always have to be a positive thing in order for it to happen. Just as a tree can grow branches that will not contribute to its, you know, task, purpose, niche, they still grow regardless. And I feel like all change is growth, regardless of direction. But I feel like sometimes we have ourselves rooted in this hysteric idea that all must be fixed, or we need to complete all of our issues and make sure nothing is left in order for us to be deemed as grown or growing or, you know, contributing to our own growth, when that's not true. The only way, the only true way to see growth is to keep encountering struggle, placing the self in the situations where we can see the fruits of our labor, being able to perceive how we are with reference to ourselves, being both the viewer and the thing being viewed all at the same time. This duality of dissociation is what I believe to be human consciousness. And accepting your own role as someone responsible for the self, that's when you're able to start to grow. Growth is a constant. We must be able to create the distinction for ourselves which direction we want to grow. And we must also root ourselves in some material that we wish to have within us. I feel like a lot of us root ourselves within a lot of past experience, trauma, negativity, and that causes us to only be able to grow with that negativity inside of us. We're not positing enough positivity and reality into our own goals and aspirations as to who we want to be. And in turn, that causes us to keep repeating the same cycle and causing us to continue to be that person that we want to change. A lot of things in this life are negative, but it's up to us to bury our roots in the small instantiations of positivity that lie within ourselves. For it's somewhat a decision made by the mind and not reflected in our reality. Our perceptions of life act as a mirror into our subconscious mind, a way to see all that is.
I just want to shit. Fuck.
If we are always looking for things that are alluding to us not growing and feeling them, then that's all we'll ever be able to feel. That's the only capacity we have. The human mind and human brain is going to find what it looks for 9 times out of 10. And if we're constantly looking for negative, then that's all that will be. The unstressed eye sees an unstressed world, so the more we squint ourselves in search, the more obscured our vision. We're looking for the negative things. We often look for the issues, and that's somewhat what contributes to the fact that issues are always prevalent. We're finding what we're looking for. We're finding what we're giving attention to. We're only receiving what we're feeding our consciousness. You have to be conscious of your consciousness in many ways. And I feel like we're consuming a lot of negative. We're on this constant journey of the continued consumption of things that do not serve us. And oftentimes, when we consume these things that don't serve us, it's reflected in our who we are. We're constantly looking towards the negative, focused on what bad stuff is happening in life. I feel like there's never going to be a time in life where you can't point out something that's negative. So what is the actual point in constantly thinking about it? If all you can do is think about it, then it's probably not worth thought. And that's not to say with like grand issues or stuff that you necessarily want to think about. But it's things having to do with yourself that are a detriment to who you are and a detriment to who you want yourself to be. Of course, you should be mindful of your own moral standing and how you view yourself and how you function in society. We are social creatures, and that is an important thing. However, regardless of how you know, ought to be viewed, hold yourself accountable for that compass. Don't neglect the fact that you're flawed and say, oh, I'm just a perfect person, because nobody's perfect. Once you think you're perfect, that's when you start to get set in. Once you think that you're done, that's when you start to have issues. It's that running away from that pain, running away from the realizations that make you realize that in reality you're just running away from yourself. To us, not growing is crazy. You know, peace in this regard is found by those who try to get to a point where they no longer have to try. To grow as people, we do not need much, but to create a reference point. And it is in our nature to grow. And this reference point has to be ourselves at 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10. If we're constantly referencing others for our own growth, then it'll never seem like we're growing. If we're constantly instantiating points in time where we aren't grown or we haven't grown, then we're living then and not now. The present moment is all we have control of, so it's solely beneficial to keep focusing on what we have now and what we're capable of in this present moment in order to attribute to our growth rather than looking at times at which where we wish we had that type of capability. Because ultimately that does not serve us. Of course we can remember what we need to change, what needs to happen in order for us to see our own growth. But at the end of the day, you'll only see growth if you use yourself as the reference. You only see growth if you keep putting yourself in these situations that show you've grown. When you start to, encounter situations that maybe in the past would have caused a negative reaction or impacted you super negatively, but now you no longer have that distinction. And I'm not talking about just being numb to the certain stimulus or situation, but growing past it, realizing its place in reference to you, and being able to create that distinction between what is and what does not contribute to who you are. And ultimately, the one who defines that is going to be you. So the implication is to try to grow. It's in our nature to do it no matter what. But how we do it, however, is up to us. It is sometimes hard to overpower your mind and try to do things that are somewhat contradictory to the way you've experienced life as of now and grown up. But that's the type of leap you need to make in order to start growing, to somewhat relinquish the parts of yourself that are holding you back. I feel like we're too held back by our negative attributes to truly outgrow them. We act as if they're there forever, yet wish they were gone forever at the same time. We hold on to them, yet we're running away from them at the same time. It's kind of a contradiction. The more we focus on what we lack, the more we worry. Like, the more you focus on things you need to improve, the more you'll notice. So I guess the point is to ground yourself in some type of reality where your growth is a positive thing, where you're constantly trying to be better. Focus on ways at which you can be better rather than focusing on ways you're not. Be like, how can I do this better? Rather than I'm doing this bad. I feel like it's that primary distinction that separates the people who are able to improve themselves and actually grow from the people who repeat the same cycle over and over again and change in ways that even themselves don't appreciate.